of the Kiwanis and the K family, members, fellow disciples, you may not have realized that when you sign the form and put the K on, you are a disciple of Christ. Of the Kiwanis and the Kiwanis. You're a disciple. Members, fellow disciples of Christ. Tonight, we are going to pray for the members who are in the passive zone. And to remind you, members, that when you speak and see them, remind them that they have a commitment to be a disciple of Christ. Almighty and everlasting God, we ask you to shower your graces on our passive Kiwanians. Reawaken them and let them realize that they made a commitment to serve the people that belongs to you and not to be served by them. We pray in the mighty name. Oh, what a beautiful name. We pray in the name of the Messiah, Jesus the Christ. Amen.
And amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, DP Leo. Glad that you could join us, sir. All right. Let me put back my agenda here just to say once again, welcome everyone. And once again, let me just welcome our guest speaker tonight, Ambassador Sheila Seeley Monteith, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Our President, Major Richard Rees, has apologized for lateness.
He's now online. He's now online.
Okay, welcome, President. All right. Well, I'll hand over to you, President. Are you?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Go ahead, President. Nice to have you. I'm glad you're here.
Yes.
All right. Do you mind if I take down this the agenda, or you want it up?
It can remain, but I'm
Okay.
in order.
Just that we can't see each other when I have it up.
Proceed.
All right, but go ahead.
Take it down. Yes. Good evening, and thank you for extending that apology for lateness. In my opening remarks, I would want to thank DP Leo for joining us again, and also for the support in the collections of our recent Barbie Fry. I now hand over to President-designate Paul Peart to bring us the welcome and introduction of members, guests, and visiting clubs and SLPs. Over to you, President-designate.
Thank you very much, President Richard. Good evening, all. Let me join also distinguished President Desmond in welcoming all of you to our special evening where we'll have our guest speaker, Ambassador Sheila Seeley Monteith. Ambassador Sheila Seeley Monteith will address us later on in the program. Of course, she's the head of the Jamaican Foreign Service as well as Permanent Secretary. She'll be introduced later in the program by our Kiwanian Dr. Andrew Burton. It also gives me pleasure to acknowledge and welcome distinguished members of the Foreign Ministry, both past and present, and also members of the Jamaican diaspora. Thank you so very much for joining us this evening. Glad to have you all. I'll be doing the roll call and the welcome of visiting clubs in the usual order. Are there any clubs that are visiting from outside of Jamaica? You may identify yourself and your delegation.
Yes, please.
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Nkwanga Michael. I am from the Kiwanis Club, Nakawa in Uganda. And I also double as the president-elect of Kiwanis Club, Kasese. I'm very much happy to be sharing a platform with you all. Thank you so much for the invite.
Glad to have you. Thank you very much for joining.
Welcome.
Yes. Are there any other clubs from outside of Jamaica? If not, we move to clubs within Jamaica. We started Division 25. Now we move to Division 24.
All right, people.
Yes.
Let me just ask everybody to close their mic, to mute their mic, unless they are on the floor.
Okay,
so
thank you very much.
A couple of mics are still open.
I think our host will have to mute everyone. And
mute everyone. Yes. And when you're introducing a delegation, you unmute.
Yes.
I'm trying to find whose mic is open.
Yes. Check on DP, Leo.
Leo was open, and also Michael, who just spoke a while ago, but I'm not sure if it's closed now.
All right, I will check.
Okay, then I'll proceed. Any other clubs from Division 24? If not, we move to Division 23 West.
Good evening, PD Paul.
Yes, good evening.
This is President Janet from the Kiwanis Club of the Sunshine City Portmore. We bring you greetings. There are 4 of us joining with you, 3 on Zoom and 1 on YouTube. Really looking forward to this meeting and all the information that will be passed on. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for joining your delegation as well. Welcome as usual. Are there any other clubs from Division 23 West?
Yes, good evening, President. This is President Lillian from the Kiwanis Club of the First City. This evening, so far, our delegation is of 2, inclusive of DLG. The others on shortly. Thank you for the
calling to you for talk. Turn it on.
Just stable and close in.
Can you mute yourself for me, please? I just can't find who.
No.
Can you mute yourself for me?
Yes.
If not, I mute everyone and you open your microphone again, President Designate. Let's just see.
Yes. Oh. Okay, then. Thank you. Thanks very much, DP Desmond.
I will mute all now and then you unmute for me, please.
Okay, I will. Appreciate it. Okay. Oh, okay, then wonderful. Yeah. So let us continue with our roll call of clubs. Any clubs that are visiting with us from Division 23 West? Are there any other? I move to Division 23 East. '23 Central.
Good afternoon, PD Paul. This is PD Chris from KCFAB. I'm alone this evening with you as our club meeting is going on, but I look forward to an interesting presentation.
So thank you very much, PD Chris, for joining. Okay, can I move to our SLPs?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. This is President Joshua Brown from the Jamaica University College Circle K International Club. And at this time, I'm alone, but a few members will join us shortly. We're looking forward to a wonderful meeting.
Thank you very much, President Joshua.
Good everyone.
Are there? Yes, go ahead, please. I'm hearing you.
This is President Orena from the Dunum Park Technical High School Key Club, and we are 3 in number, and we're happy to be here.
Welcome, President, and your delegation.
Good night. I am President Deborah Heron from the St. Hughes High School Key Club for Girls. Today I am a loner, but expecting more.
Okay, thank you so very much for joining.
Good evening,
People,
everyone.
I think
Yes.
DLG Gerthlin is also here. She may not have,
Okay.
maybe she came on after you had asked for East.
DLG Gertlin, could you introduce your delegation and let us know?
Good evening. Thank you, PD Paul. I am sorry I'm alone at the moment. Not that I'm sorry I'm alone, but just to say that others will join you shortly. But I bring you greetings from the Kiwanis Club of New Kingston. It is good to be on. Have a great meeting and be blessed, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much again, DLG Gertlin. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. KRO Courtney Palmer from the Kingston College Key Club. Flying solo at the moment, but looking forward for a great meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining, Courtney. It's always a pleasure to have you. Okay. Are there any other SLPs? If not, I'll move to visitors of Kiwanians.
Hi, good evening. President Kimani here from the UTech Papin Circle K. Happy to be here. I'm currently by myself, not sure if others will pop in, but I'm looking forward to a great meeting.
Okay, thank you very much for joining. It's always a pleasure to have you. Are there any visitors? I see members of our foreign ministry here with us.
Hi, I'm Eurydice Condison, and I'm visiting.
Oh,
I've been visiting for some time, so I'm enjoying it, and I'm looking forward to this evening's meeting.
Thank you so very much for joining. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hi, I'm Joan Howard. I'm the VP of the Jamaica Nursing Association of Florida. We normally partner with the Kiwanis of Kendall Southdale for mission trips to Dental this time of the year. The COVID has allowed us not to do it, so I'm looking forward also to this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for joining from Florida. It's appreciated.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Dante Matthews, broadcast journalist at the Jamaica Information Service.
Welcome. Thanks for joining. Are there any other visitors that
Yes, PD Paul.
Yes.
Hello. Yes. I am Richard Olmsted from the Palmdale West Club in Southern California, and greetings to all of you from California, and I look forward to your meeting this evening.
Yes, thank you so very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you.
Good evening, Paul.
Good evening.
Okay. Hi, CG Wilson.
Yes, welcome, Consul General.
Oh, thank you. CG Wilson from the Consulate General of New York. I believe Mr. Rochester is on with us as well, and I'm looking forward to listening to your presentation.
Yes, thank you so much for joining, CG. It's appreciated.
Of course. Thank you.
And good afternoon, everyone. The consul here here in New York. Thank you very much, Consul General Wilson. I'm also joined by Mr. Corey White.
Good evening, everyone.
And
good evening.
And Miss Nicole Bailey.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for joining.
We are excited about this presentation and certainly keen to actually tune in. Thank you so very much.
Thanks for joining. It's a pleasure to have you on with us this evening.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Here. This is Sharon Burrell out of the consulate in Miami, and I believe online also is Miss Hortense Francis from the Consulate General in Miami. Really happy to be on this evening.
Thank you very much for joining Ms. Burrell and Ms. Francis. A pleasure to have you with us this evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Rogers, Foreign Service Officer at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, and it is a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to a great presentation from Ambassador Monteith this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for joining, Mr. Rogers. And I recognize in the list that some of our former ambassadors are with us this evening. I see Ambassador Wheeler, Ambassador Montague. Glad to have you all. Thank you so very much for joining. It's a pleasure to have you all. Okay. All right, let us continue with the program. President Richard, over to you, sir.
Thank you, President-designate Paul. We have had no apologies for absence, So I'll now proceed to hand over to VP Designate and Bulletin Editor Newton Ramdale for recognition of birthdays and anniversaries.
Thank you, President Richard. Good evening, everyone. We have a very star-studded evening this afternoon. For our birthdays and anniversaries this week, we have today is the birthday of Blossom, who is the wife of past director David Bailey. And we want to say happy birthday to her. It's also the anniversary of Nicola and distinguished Secretary Stephen Gregg today, that is. So remember, give them a call. Tomorrow will be the anniversary of past director Claribert Scott and his wife Hazel. And on the 18th, we're going to have distinguished, DP Charles Sims and his wife Georgia celebrating their birthday. Sunday will be Father's Day, but that's the day when Director Warren McDonald will be saying happy birthday to his wife Joan. And those of you who have her number, please give her a call, say happy birthday also. I'm going to ask anyone who is in this meeting who has a special occasion this week, last week, or coming up, you can, through President Richard, to open your mic and let us so we can celebrate with you. Anyone?
Oh, today's my birthday. Today's my birthday, so I'm just on cloud 9.
Okay, and your birthday is the correct day because today is the day you get to spend some time with us. And
happy birthday.
What is going to turn out to be a great presentation. So happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Are there anyone else? Is there anyone else? No? Okay, well, I know we're all anxious to hear what the ambassador has to say, so I'm going to return you to President Richard.
Thank you, VP Designate Newton. We now take DLG William Reeson, and he'll present on Cuban education. That will be followed by the introduction of our guest speaker by Kiwanian Dr. Andrew Burton, in that order.
Thank you, President Richard. Good evening, fellow Kiwanians and guests. In place of Kiwani's education this evening, I'm just going to report on the second quarter Divisional Council meeting, which was held last Sunday, June the 13th. 9 members of our club, including our 3 delegates, attended the Divisional Council meeting, which approximately over 120,000 Kiwanians, including delegates and observers in attendance. Present from our club were President Richard Reese, President Designate Paul Peard, Distinguished President Desmond Batchelor. They were our 3 delegates. And also present were past District Trustee Ralston Eunice, Distinguished President Chris Robinson, Distinguished President Stuart Spencer, Past Director Easton McKinley and Kiwanian Leighton Wilson, and Secretary Distinguished Lieutenant Governor Willie Reeson. It was reported by Governor Delores Lewis that the division has grown by 47 members during the quarter, making a total of 90 new members for the year. The division has added 1 new club, Emerging Leaders, which was organized on May the 12th, consisting mainly of past service leadership program members across the Caribbean. The new president is Shanice Springer from Barbados. The club opener was our own past district trustee Robson Eunice, and the 2 sponsoring clubs were Friends Across Borders and Constant Spring. Quick note on the past Lieutenant Governor's Council. Division 23 now has its first past Lieutenant Governor Council Chairman in the presence of a distinguished Lieutenant Governor of Excellent Pamela Rodney White. The Lieutenant Governor ribbon for the second quarter, that is January to March, was won by Friends Across Borders. quick note on committee reports on the Kiwanis Growth Strategy Plan. Training for President-designate and President-elect-designate was held on Saturday gone. It was attended by both President-designate Paul Peart and President-elect-designate Junior Stewart. The division mass induction was held on May the 25th, and at which night they inducted 31 members. There's a quick note on the formation of SLP. And Q4 strategic, that is during the fourth quarter strategic membership committee will be focusing on a membership drive with members of the Jamaican Defense Force and the police constabulary. The membership growth and retention, there's been growth in 9 of our 13 clubs. Mentioned before, formation of 1 new club and 4 clubs remaining to pay their divisional dues. The Kiwanis Club of Kingston came first in the Platinum Division for club to 65 members and more in the Service Leadership Program competition. And lastly, the Kiwanis Club of Kingston came first in the Diamond Division of the Edgerton Kinloy competition for club 65 members and over in the clubbing competition. We can now claim our position as the king of the road. President Richard, that's a short report on the second quarter divisional council meeting. Thank you.
Very much. I now invite Kiwani and Dr. Andrew Burton to introduce our guest speaker.
Good evening, everyone. Andrew Burton here. So the pleasure is mine today to welcome again and to introduce our guest speaker for the evening, Ambassador Sheila Sealy-Monteith, CD. And when given the resources to be able to introduce her, if I were to summarize for you all of her accomplishments and accolades and professional achievements, it really would serve as an inspirational speech for tonight. But my task is to give you a preview of who is addressing you, and I do so gladly. So regarding her academic achievements, she has received multiple degrees, both locally and internationally. She had received a Bachelor of Arts with honors at the University of the West Indies, our premier tertiary institution, as well as did further studies, got a postgraduate diploma with honors in international relations from UWI, and a Master of Sciences in International Relations, and then went on to do further studies overseas with a professional certificate in Human Resource Management from the Carleton University in Ottawa, Canada. Professionally, she started her work with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade in 1986. I hope I'm not aging her by giving years. This is after the completion of her postgraduate diploma at UWI. And there she started as a Foreign Service Officer, firstly in the Department of Political Affairs, and then went on to Economic Affairs. And she has served as a member on a number of expert panels for regional programs, a counselor and advisor to international committees and various assemblies. Of note, she has served as Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Jamaica to, firstly in Mexico, and to 6 other regions within within Central America between 2005 and 2010, and the same position representing Jamaica to Belgium with accreditation to other member states of the European Union between 2017 and 2019. And in February 2021, just 4 months ago, she was given the title of Permanent Secretary. She assumed her present role as Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. And this comprises 34 years of service with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, with involvement both locally and regionally, as well as internationally, as was outlined. She outlines particular interest in developmental issues, in understanding international organizations and in their role in development, as well as an interest in human resource management, policymaking, and implementation. So her work is not only in the quantity of years that she served, but also in the quality of her work, as evidenced by her numerous awards most notably being the Order of Distinction of Jamaica that she has affixed to her name in the Commander class. And she has also received a Long Service Award, being a member of the Civil Service of Jamaica, serving the civil service for 25 years. And regionally, she was assigned the Order of the Aztec Eagle, which is the highest award that can be granted to a non-national by the government of Mexico. Her interests otherwise, because you may wonder how she would accomplish such work on the regional and international scale. She's not only fluent in English, but also in Spanish, and she's conversant with working ability in French. She has professional interests as well in interior decor, gardening, and philanthropy. So she's multifaceted, and she's also married with 2 children, 2 adult children. So Kiwanians and friends and our international guests, join me in welcoming Ambassador Sheila Seeley Monteith, member of the Order of Distinction of Jamaica in the Commander class, and she's here to address us on the role of Jamaica's foreign ministry and its benefits to the society.
Thank you, Andrew. I just want to be sure that I'm being seen and heard. Can I have that confirmed?
Yes, seen and heard, and you can share. You have the privilege to share also, Ambassador.
Thank you so much. Major Richard Rees, President of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston, other members of your executive board, and what is clearly the larger Kiwanis membership, Mr. Paul Peart, President Designate, who happens to be a member of my staff, past and current members of staff of the Jamaican Foreign Ministry, and this is quite a surprise to me, so I actually feel like I'm being tested tonight by my own people. Ladies and gentlemen, and a special welcome to those who have joined us from outside of Jamaica. It is really an honor that you have chosen to be with us this evening. And I suspect that there are more than a few faces in this audience which are familiar to me, and that is beyond my foreign ministry family. I am happy to join the Kiwanis family, if only for this brief encounter. I could not help but reflect that during my tenure in Mexico, I was invited on more than a few occasions to address service clubs, and the Rotary comes to mind, but I have not done so here at home. So this makes your invitation this evening really very special. The Kiwanis Club has had a long-standing and enviable history of service globally, and certainly here in Jamaica. Over the years, your movement has grown significantly in the number of clubs and in the depth and breadth of the contribution you make to our society. I have often wondered how, as a country, we would have fared without the support of organizations like yours, stepping into the breach where governments and other players are not able to reach, and doing so as consistently as you have done. Allow me, therefore, to congratulate you in your work at the national level and within your respective clubs for the invaluable service which you offer to our communities for now 57 years, as I've been advised. I have been asked to speak about the role of the Jamaican Foreign Service and the contribution which it makes to Jamaica. My views are my own, and in fact, I will draw heavily on my own experience, albeit as a member of staff. I have been a proud member of the Jamaican Foreign Service for over 3 decades. In fact, in just about 2 weeks, it will be 35 years. It has been a most rewarding and fulfilling career. I find myself in a quandary whenever I'm asked what I do as a foreign service officer or a diplomat. Surely, if I introduce myself as a teacher, accountant, entrepreneur, artist, or pilot, there would not be too much explanation required beyond details of the specific area of pursuit or location. It is not the case with the Foreign Service, and one has to be prepared to present pretty near a thesis in order to explain exactly what we do. One of the common but hardly sufficient explanations is that we carry out representational duties on behalf of our country, but I do not think that that goes far enough. Let me therefore try to help myself and you by explaining the nature of this hard to comprehend and explain area of the government's operations and the contributions which it makes to our country. I will do so from the perspective of my own journey through the Foreign Ministry. A career in the Jamaican Foreign Service usually begins at home, the headquarters, with the first exposure to the content and reach of Jamaica's foreign policy. The development, execution, and management of foreign policy and relations, the purview of the Foreign Service, find expression on several fronts, notably bilateral and multilateral, as well as consular, among the traditional pursuits. And in more recent times, we speak of the diaspora and public diplomacy. Issues of trade, economics, environment, and other subject-specific areas can be addressed through either bilateral or multilateral diplomacy. For Jamaica, the Foreign Ministry was among the first 4 departments of government established with independence. This coming of age for any country assumes the need for recognition and engagement externally, and thus your external presence and outreach are given primary importance. In fact, less than 6 weeks after independence on the 6th of August 1962, Jamaica became a member of the United Nations on the 18th of September, and thus began its international outreach and footprint until today. Membership in other international organizations were to follow, and among other actions taken, we established diplomatic and consular missions in other countries, even as they too set up their own offices here in Kingston. In effect, the Foreign Service supports this positioning and involvement of Jamaica on the international stage, assuring a constant presence and the basis for effective engagement with both bilateral and multilateral partners. It is quite often said that Jamaica bats way above its size in international affairs. Currently, Jamaica has 19 diplomatic and close to 90 consular missions overseas, as over the years, we have opened some and closed others. This certainly does not provide wide coverage, but we sought to be strategic and to be present in the continents and regions which offer us a good basis for the broadest possible outreach. The limited physical presence of our offices has been complemented by what is called non-resident accreditation, in that an ambassador or high commissioner present in one country would enjoy multiple accreditation to several other countries within the region. In my case, for example, I was accredited to 7 countries in Central America when I served as ambassador in Mexico, and 7 countries in total when I was in Belgium. We are a small developing country, and so we do the best we can. Many, many other countries are in similar straits. To think that the United Nations has a membership of 193 countries, it is therefore almost inconceivable that any one country could maintain a diplomatic mission in all of those countries. Having mentioned the United Nations, perhaps that is a good point of departure to talk about Jamaica and its relations with this global body, which is the acme for the practice of multilateral diplomacy. My first posting overseas was at the United Nations in New York, and this was where my love affair with multilateralism began. I am an unapologetic convert. The concept of countries forming this collective unit to address global problems is as valid today as at the conception and inception of the United Nations in 1945, following the Second World War, to prevent succeeding generations from having to go through a similar experience. The United Nations has offices in several countries, with New York being the epicenter. The essence of multilateral diplomacy, as practiced at this global mecca, is the opportunity provided to countries, especially small developing ones like ours, to have equal voice and vote based on the principle of one country, one vote in matters on the international agenda. Of course, we cannot ignore the exception of the veto which exists in the Security Council, and that other centers of multilateral diplomacy, such as the World Trade Organization, do not function on this basis. Nevertheless, there is no denying the weight given to the respect for the principles of international law as practiced by the United Nations, and the leverage which this gives to Jamaica and other developing countries to participate in global decision-making processes in the promotion of our national interests. So what does this mean for those of us at home? The deliberations and decisions which are made at the multilateral level affect almost every area of human endeavor. Law of the sea and the law of outer space, culture, environment, maternal and child health, road safety, use of chemical, nuclear, and other weapons, trade, race, and human rights, you name it, and there's an area of the United Nations in which it can find a place. I recall my surprise when the matter of albinism, as in the condition affecting persons known as albino, became the subject of a resolution. And by the way, there is a World Toilet Day. Many of these issues have some relevance to Jamaica, and to that extent, it is to our benefit to participate and influence the discussions and their outcomes in ways which support our national interests. The international community has been tasked with developing laws and standards through treaties and agreements which govern activities that will be carried out by member states, and usually through a long process of negotiation to ensure that they satisfy the broadest possible interest. Jamaica's involvement with the law of the sea is historic. In that regard, our diplomats and other government officials were at the forefront of discussions to ensure that the benefits of any exploitation of the seas and oceans would redound not only to the benefit of the few, but especially to small countries which do not have the capacity to carry out those activities. If I fast forward to the present, not only have we long been the host of an international organization, the International Seabed Authority, the only developing country in the world to do so, but we recently became a sponsoring state for deep seabed mining, which will allow us to benefit even though we do not have the technical capacity to conduct mining ourselves. This is but one example of Jamaica's involvement in the practice of multilateral diplomacy. Let me take another, again from the United Nations. Historically, much of what makes the headlines with respect to the United Nations revolve around major political and even economic developments. Crises in parts of the world and the Security Council's response, prolonged famines and natural disaster do make the headlines, as do climate change and the Paris Agreement. Perhaps less likely to spend much time in the evening news is the work of a web of agencies and bodies which provide technical assistance and carry out very significant activities and indeed perform a vital supportive role in the sustainable development of developing countries. I speak here of agencies like the UNDP, UNICEF, FAO, PAHO, UNAIDS, UNESCO, UNFPA, that's a population fund, all of which have offices in Jamaica and carry out serious work of assistance in areas identified by the government as priority for their support within their respective fields. The Jamaican Foreign Service is called upon to approve and accredit the representatives and to work closely with them to support their presence on the ground and offer protection to them as members of the diplomatic community. From time to time, back in their headquarters, we serve as members of their governing bodies, helping to make decisions on their budgets and operations and setting standards for the delivery of their services. Increasingly, these organizations carry out their duties on the ground in partnership with non-governmental organizations, and in so doing, extend their reach to many areas of the Jamaican society. It would be remiss of me not to highlight that in the conduct of its work, the ministry partners heavily with other ministries, departments, and agencies within their respective areas of competence and maintains a mutually supportive relationship. In this regard, the ministry functions to exercise its convening authority to bring others to the table, benefiting from their technical expertise, and thus being enabled to carry out its responsibilities in the area of advocacy externally. This it does on many issues, particularly those affecting the small island developing states and their vulnerabilities, and would include climate change, tax good governance, correspondent banking, climate funding, and the implementation of various plans of action for sustainable development, and that would include Agenda 2030. Through the mechanism of the Interministerial Committee on Human Rights, for example, established at the instance of the Foreign Ministry, Jamaica has been able to mount credible defense within international fora of its human rights practices, given the dedicated efforts made nationally to improve our record in this area. Perhaps it is time for me to segue to the conduct of our bilateral diplomacy, moving now from multilateral diplomacy. And this is possibly the area of our operations most evident from your vantage point here in Jamaica, given the presence of a number of diplomatic and consular missions. Let me quickly identify that we have two kinds of missions in Kingston, and you will note that I say Kingston, as an embassy or high commission must be located in the capital city of a country. And I will just further add that the embassy and high commission carry out similar functions, except that the high commission really relates to countries which are members of the Commonwealth, hence the name. We have the diplomatic corps consisting of embassies, high commissions, and the offices of international organizations. In addition, a country may host a consular corps, which is a group of representatives, usually persons who live in the country, representing another state in order to provide assistance to their nationals. The diplomatic corps is governed by the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations and the consular corps by the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations. I will come to the conduct of our consular relations shortly, as this is an area that most immediately affects Jamaican nationals wherever they travel and reside. But just for a moment longer, I will continue on the bilateral front, indicating that the Foreign Ministry manages Jamaica's bilateral relations with the majority of countries which are members of the international community, either on a resident basis in select countries, through the countries which have a mission in Kingston, or on a non-resident basis. We enter into diplomatic relations with countries which share our principles, interests, and concerns, and with whom we can engage in activities to mutual benefit. Our relations with countries in the Caribbean, in Africa, Asia, and Latin America are gratifying in that respect. with other regions such as Europe and North America, given differences in levels of development, the benefit may well differ between the parties, but each assumes that there is a desired outcome to the pursuit of the engagement. Jamaica is pleased to host a diplomatic community of 26 missions and 22 international organizations, as well as a consular corps of 42 members. Among them, we have many countries which offer direct and indirect assistance, one of which is the largest provider of grant resources, another the largest in budgetary support, and others with varying levels of assistance in areas such as scholarship and training, legal drafting, implementation of international agreements, climate funding, youth engagement, inscription of cultural heritage, investment, poverty alleviation projects, among others. The Foreign Ministry is a channel for communication in many of these interactions, and often the point of liaison between governments, overseeing MOUs and a plethora of cooperation agreements. The ministry is also able to interpret cultural differences and other factors which may inhibit or support appropriate engagements. In times of disasters and emergencies, the Foreign Ministry operates as a coordinator of international assistance. Most recently, this was brought into play at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, which saw the Foreign Service at work, along with the Planning Institute of Jamaica and other local entities, to provide information to the bilateral and international partners on areas of need and channels for delivery of assistance, to avoid duplication of efforts and support their interest in donation. Bilateral contact to secure vaccines is an ongoing focus of the ministry's efforts. Beyond my multilateral stint in New York, I've had the fortune of being assigned to bilateral posts in Mexico, Canada, and Belgium, all of which presented opportunities to explore new relations or pursue existing ones in the areas of trade and investment. More recently, these efforts have been formalized into the Economic Diplomacy Program pursued jointly with JAMPRO, which offers a more targeted approach to the work of our diplomatic and consular missions and through honorary investment advisors. By way of an example of our bilateral interest close to home, I've chosen to speak of Mexico, which was my vantage point into Central America, located within the same hemisphere as Jamaica, but still an area relatively unknown to many Jamaicans. Almost all of the countries, with the exception of El Salvador, boast a Jamaican community, usually associated with the Caribbean Sea. You would all be familiar with Puerto Limon in Costa Rica and Colón in Panama. We may not share similar history or language, but we do experience similar challenges, such as hurricanes and limited regional air transportation, and the vulnerability to global shocks and disruptions. The fact of our geographical proximity and of our presence in regional and multilateral organizations is reason enough for us to work together and is an example of the ongoing efforts of the Foreign Ministry through bilateral and multilateral diplomacy to reduce the divide between us. The same principle is used, albeit with a huge geographical difference, to order our approach to our relations with countries in Asia and Africa. Allow me to venture into the area in which the Foreign Ministry may be most known, or in some cases maligned, its consular functions. These duties relate to the assistance which a government provides to its nationals, quite frequently those overseas, and would include applications for passports and citizenship documents, repatriation, deportation, and other needs which are within the ability of the government to provide. It is to be noted that documents of the kind mentioned above, and in addition others like birth certificates and police records, are not produced by the Foreign Ministry. However, the ministry acts as a conduit for information or for applications as appropriate. It carries out its activities either from headquarters, authentication services for documents are provided, or through its web of missions and consulates overseas, which manage application forms for passport and citizenship, or the latter's renunciation. In addition, visa applications are processed for non-nationals. In many of these services, the ministry works very closely with the Passport, Immigration, and Citizenship Agency, and in fact, hosts PICA offices in a few of our overseas offices. Where we are often challenged is in the area of assistance to nationals in distress. At the same time, we recognize this as an opportunity to extend the care and humanity of which many are unaware, perhaps, but which characterize the staff of the ministry over the years. During my tenure in Mexico, we managed then, as now, a scholarship program for Jamaican students. One of the students, within days of arrival in the country, suffered a mental breakdown and eventually had to be hospitalized as it was rather serious. The embassy stepped in, visited, consulted with the medical team, authorized procedures which were urgent, and ultimately received support from headquarters for his return home when he was able to do so, accompanied by a medical doctor who had been deployed to Mexico for the purpose. In Central America, stranded fishermen are not unusual. And when rescued from sea by the foreign authorities, the embassy or consulate has had to assume responsibility for arranging return in consultation with both governments. I vividly recall anxiously trying to get 3 of them home for Christmas after they had been stranded at sea since the September before, and in fact, one of them died at sea. Ultimately, they were able to make it home just before the new year, a great source of joy to the embassy staff. The first time I entered a prison facility, I did so on consular visits to Jamaicans in Venezuela, similarly in Costa Rica and Panama. Happily, the reason was not my misbehavior. It was our role to ensure the exercise of the right of our nationals to have access to their representative, who would intercede to ensure humane conditions were provided and interpretation was available where necessary, among other provisions. My final example under this rubric is taken from the situation occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic. We are all aware of the impact on thousands of our nationals who were outside of the country at the time and needed to return home. With restrictions in place everywhere, this became a great challenge. The Jamaican Foreign Service had a major role to play, both from headquarters as well as through all our missions, to try to address the very dire situation in which thousands of nationals found themselves. In the case of Europe, we had Jamaicans who were on holidays or had just finished their academic programs when disaster hit and suddenly had no way of getting home. Between March and June of 2020, our offices were kept busy relaying information to them and to their relatives, organizing the community where there was one, providing support by way of food and money, assisting with travel insurance and healthcare, securing financial assistance to pay for accommodation, and finally, leading the organization of a repatriation flight which traveled to Kingston on the 28th of June, bearing nationals from Asia, Europe, and Africa in what we called the Miracle Flight. This was no mean feat. In other consular responsibilities, the ministry works in close association with the local authorities in matters relating to the abduction of children, for which there is international regulation. More recently, given the challenges of the pandemic, our missions have been hosts to remote testimony for cases in court. Many of our missions spend a significant portion of time and effort on handling consular matters. It is an area of need which is constantly growing, and there is great investment by the ministry in the support systems such as training and customer service, as well as in the resources to handle the ever-increasing demands. A close relative of our consular duties is the role played by the ministry in diaspora diplomacy. In a sense, it is the more proactive and productive role in that the diaspora is a contributing partner in national development, and the ministry operates to put in place mechanisms to engage, support, and facilitate its contribution. Since 2004, the Foreign Ministry has mounted the biennial Jamaica Diaspora Conference. In the context of the pandemic, we have had to adjust our aspirations this year. So I trust that by now, all of you would be aware that tomorrow, 16th of June, is Diaspora Day, which marks the beginning of a day and a half of diaspora activities, beginning in the morning with the Jamaica Diaspora Sustainability Symposium under the theme Jamaica and the Diaspora, Stronger Together for a Sustainable Future. It will be followed by the Governor General's award ceremony, which on this occasion is being presented to heroes of the pandemic in the diaspora, and culminating in the Prime Minister's town hall on that first day. On the morning of the 17th, the young people will have their youth forum, and the youth are an essential and integral part of our diaspora engagement. I encourage you all to share this information with your friends and relatives at home and abroad, and if you can, you should join as well. Registration is free and it is encouraged. mfaft.iteneri.com. The events will also be live streamed on GIS. Ladies and gentlemen, I have come to the end of my presentation. I hope that I have given you a snapshot of the span of the ministry's role. We believe that we have been given the great privilege of projecting, promoting, and defending Jamaica's national interests on the regional and international stages, and feel gratified that for close to 59 years, colleagues, some gone before, others retired or otherwise separated from the ministry, have done so in a way that has brought credit to our country and its people. I use this opportunity to salute them and to thank all of you in your various dispensations who in one way or another have been supportive of the role and mission of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade of Jamaica. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for that excellent and concise presentation, given the subject areas. And I'm speaking as one who was rescued by the overseas missions to return home. Of the 3 passports I have, the Jamaican passport was the most valuable to return home. I now invite DP Stewart.
Mommy, you have to open the door. It might be armed.
Handle.
Because I gave him a key.
Delia Gilling, can you mute, please? Can you mute, please?
We apologize for that. I now invite DP Stuart Spencer to chair the question and answer session. I've invited members who are in attendance to put their questions in the chat. And I've also asked that the media be given the privilege of asking direct questions, if any. And after that, our guests can also ask questions directly. So over to DP Stuart Spencer.
Thank you, President Richard. But there are a lot of mics that were open because I guess maybe they want to give some applause. I'm going to ask DP Desmond to just close them all, and then I'll reopen my mic. Because I think there are going to be disturbances with that many mics being open.
I just close them and you can unmute yourself, DP Stewart.
Okay, I got that. Well, I'm going to take, I don't know if I should call it a privilege, but I like to thank Ambassador Montes because I consider it a privilege that we had her to address us this evening. But I want to ask the first question though. In all the areas that we have gotten involved in, there must be one area or maybe 2 that you want us to get involved in that we haven't been able to get up to this point in time. Is there such an area? And maybe, I just wanted to start with that question.
Unmute,
Thank you. I just want to know whether you would prefer, I will start with your question, but perhaps if you want to allow a few questions at a time to allow more people to get in, I wouldn't mind that. But let me say this, and my answer to your question, thank you so much. My answer to your question is really a very simple one, and I suspect it might not be what you're thinking, what you're expecting. It is that the foreign ministry remains largely unknown to so many in terms of the breadth and the span of its work. And yes, those areas that make the headline, often when it is controversial, usually it stays for a longer period. But there is so much that is worthy and worthwhile in the conduct of foreign affairs and the role that our citizens play, whether they are at home or they are overseas, in foreign policy. And if we had a better appreciation of the work of the foreign ministry and by extension, what the average citizen contributes to that, then I would hope that, I believe that would really help us in the way we carry out our work. I'm going to talk in this regard about what is considered now to be public diplomacy, where governments target the public in other jurisdictions in order to promote better understanding of their own policies. So that is to show you that there's a need for that wider understanding. So all the things about which I speak, multilateral diplomacy, bilateral diplomacy, consular, diaspora, all of those involve the human beings. And I really would wish that persons have a better appreciation. And in a very practical way, what this means, when you travel, you see yourself also as ambassadors of Jamaica. You may be the only person, the only Jamaican that some people ever get to meet in their lives. So while I may carry the title officially, you're also an ambassador of Jamaica and will be able to speak and to operate in that way because you're actually helping us in the conduct of our foreign policy by presenting a picture of our country, which could well influence the way others relate to us. A long answer for your question, but I would hope that greater understanding, information sharing, appreciation of the role of the ministry is something that I think my colleagues would also want to share.
Ambassador.
DP Stewart, I have a question, but I will wait until somebody else asks, all right? I'll wait my turn.
Okay, I'm not looking at the chat. I'm going to ask Newton to just monitor the chat for me, but I'm going to start with persons from the floor. Who is there anyone who would like to ask a question right now of our ambassador?
The media first.
Yeah, that person is from GIS, so they can jump in if they want. I didn't hear his name.
No, I have no questions now.
Right. Okay. The floor is open.
All right, well, you can take my question then.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, if Desmond.
Ambassador Montid, thank you very much for your presentation. I have a question. I hope it won't get you in any trouble, but then you're a diplomat.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the US government is very vigilant in enforcing the shipwrighter agreement, particularly in intercepting marijuana at sea. Why can't they put similar effort and energy in assisting Jamaica and preventing the importation of illegal arms and ammunition?
Well, you do know that you are putting me into trouble.
Well, I don't want you to get into trouble.
Well, you are putting me into trouble. And this is one of those questions that, as a diplomat, I think discretion is one of the attributes that we must exercise. And my discretion this evening is to say to you that I would prefer not to have to answer that question because I'm not speaking this evening in a capacity that will allow me to do so safely.
Thank you. Thank you. I understand.
Okay. Are there any other members who would like to pose a question?
I have a simple one. I'm just anxious to know, what's your alma mater?
Well, I am very proud to say that I am from Glenmuir High School.
Hey, Bishop Gibson's creation.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Good.
DP Stewart,
yes.
This is not a question, but I just want to say from I listened to the ambassador and I saw her, I could tell you that she's from Glenmuir because I also am from Glenmuir.
Who is this?
Newton Ramdale.
Oh, Newton Flagrants.
You could have given me a little heads up before. I didn't know that. Okay.
But can I say, while your others are contemplating their questions, and I appreciate the interest, just to indicate that one of the issues we tend to find is that many persons do not consciously think that before they travel, they should know where the nearest embassy, consulate, or high commission is in their point of destination. And certainly if you just went for a week's vacation, or you might not have found it necessary to know. But more and more we are finding that you never know what will happen. We don't expect disasters to attend us whenever we go, but it is not a bad idea to just have that information. So if you plan to go to Greece, we do not necessarily have an embassy in Greece, but we have an honorary consul. We may have an honorary consul there, and the embassy that covers Greece could be in Geneva or in London. It could be, the point is that it could be somewhere else, which is not necessarily close, but we're able to share that information. And your default is always the foreign ministry, always the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But it is an excellent idea to have that information at hand and to be able to reach out to the embassy in the event that there's a situation which would require you to do so. I have colleagues online, and I know that I didn't even scratch the surface of the sacrifices they make and the service they render at so many levels. And this is just talking about the consular matters, which affect Jamaicans who are living overseas and Jamaicans who are here at home. And so it is my encouragement that we become a little more familiar to some of these responsibilities so that we can feel as a ministry that we are better serving you, which is a role that we take seriously.
Okay, I'm gonna ask, I'm not sure how to pronounce the first name, Uridisi Condison, he has his hand up, or she?
No, she.
Could you go ahead?
Sure. So, Miss Ambassador, so I would like, how would you advise someone who would like to, say someone just leaving college or university, how would you advise them to become a part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? What's the approach? What's the procedure? How do they go about it?
Well, thank you so much. Nice of you to have asked your question. It's such a pity that they did not do the exam last Wednesday, or yes, the exam last Wednesday. And I'm just joking when I say that. But it usually requires you, of course, with the Foreign Ministry, we have many job opportunities across a range of fields. We employ people like any other ministry. We have telephone operator, receptionists, people who work in our registry, information, IT, accountants. Really, we carry the range of careers there. If, however, you are thinking specifically of a foreign service officer in which you would work directly in the policy area, it requires you to have a degree and requires you also to go through a process by which you would sit an exam, and then there would be an interview, and there from that a shortlist will determine where you go from there. I hope that helps you.
Thank you, Mr.
Is there an age limit? I'm curious.
Well, I know it would save us money if you came close to retirement.
Okay.
But generally, there are some specificities to the foreign ministry, which allows many persons to join in at in the very early stages, right out of university or shortly thereafter, which allows them to move up through the ranks and to become grounded in the if for any organization you have some areas, some pursuits that are specific to you, others can be quite generic. So if you're an accountant, you are actually practicing your accounting career in the foreign ministry as you would elsewhere. And if you're a secretary, it would be the same. As a foreign service officer, there's pretty few other places where you go to be a foreign service officer. So to that extent, it is usually a good idea to enter at a point when you can go through the steps of becoming familiar with all aspects of this.
Sorry, go ahead.
I saw a question on the chat to give an idea of the structure of the foreign ministry. I think that was the question, and I'm assuming that it would relate to outside. And again, I'm going to speak here about the area that relates to the foreign service officers, because I think it would be quite evident that for secretaries, accountants, auditors, other supporting functions, IT, and so on, that they would relate very closely to what happens in other departments and other organizations. In terms of the foreign service officer, which is the essence of the work of the foreign ministry, we use diplomatic terms for the most part to determine your levels. We talk about, and in fact, we no longer use third secretaries, but in the diplomatic parlance, you start with a third secretary, second secretary, first secretary, then you move up to a counselor, minister, which is not a minister of government, and then an ambassador. Those are the diplomatic titles associated with levels. In order to align them better with the foreign ministry at headquarters, we usually use Foreign Service Officers 1 through to 3, so that it is better understood. But when you are post, you actually use your diplomatic titles of a first secretary, a counselor, a minister counselor. Does that help the person who asked?
I would assume it would.
Yes, yes, thank you. Thank you, it did.
Okay.
Okay. There's another question in the chat. How are negotiations with COVAX going? I don't know if that's something you can speak about.
Let me just be very general. I don't know that we are at the point of negotiation with COVAX, because I think with the COVAX mechanism was set up some time ago and had developed a particular prescription in terms of the way it will support member states, population size, and a number of those. And COVAX is now being affected by the access to the vaccines. So one would imagine that it would then have to re-rationalize the way it partitions whatever it has to the various member states. Perhaps what I would say instead, and really generally, is that the efforts are dedicated because we expect that once COVAX has vaccines and continues its work, we will continue to reap the benefit of accessing vaccine from COVAX, from the COVAX facility. But what we have been doing simultaneously is having that outreach to other entities, other bilateral partners, to see where we can enter into arrangements to secure a vaccine. It's an ongoing effort, and it is carried out not only by the Foreign Ministry, but certainly the Ministry of Health, and particularly the National Health Fund.
Okay, that should be satisfactory. Okay, is there anybody else who would like to pose a question before we go to the thank you?
Yes.
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Ambassador Monteith, thank you for a wonderful presentation. I just want to ask the question, and you probably, as previously a question was asked, you didn't want to address it. How instrumental is the foreign government involved? Say, for instance, with the UK, with the Windrush deportees and retirees, was this something that they would have, say, consulted or in dialogue ahead of time before action like this being in place, that it come to the forefront, that you can send out people? Is there anything you could mention anything on that, or is that the subject to talk about?
Well, no, Joan, I can say generally that our High Commission in London and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade is always engaged in matters, whether they're high profile or not. The Windrush matter has been on our agenda for a very long time. It is conducted at official levels between us and the government, at the level of the mission and the Jamaican community there. So there is ongoing consultation. The fact of there being at various stages outcomes which may not necessarily be what one expects doesn't mean that there isn't engagement and consultation. So I think what you really are asking is whether we have a role to play. Yes, we do. Whether we have played that role. Yes, we do, on an ongoing basis. I remember myself, as I said, I would speak of my experiences being at the Commonwealth meeting in London in 2018. Yes, it was in 2018. And we had senior, very high level government officials from Jamaica who were there and who met with high level officials from the UK side there as well to have those discussions. This is not new, it's a part of what we do. And I would perhaps just say that there are times when I jokingly say that the foreign ministry is like, sorry, Major Reese, is like the military. There's so much that happens that cannot be shared, that is not known. And sometimes, you know, we suffer as a result of that because you can't always say what you know and you do. It is the essence of diplomacy. And just think of your family. There are so many things that you do within your own family. The public only sees the outcome, sees what you are able to demonstrate, but there are other things that you do, and it's not because you wish to hide them, but because they are not at a point and perhaps never will be where you can share some things because it is the nature of the experience. But we have always aimed to be transparent, to be open, and I can say without any reservation that I have been the proudest to be and to have served with dedicated foreign service officers. It's been 35 years, so you know that I've gone through many colleagues, and they have been absolutely dedicated, never having received the credit they deserve, because it's the nature of our job that you don't necessarily do that. But I've always been up to the task, work through all kinds of sacrifices with all kinds of resource levels, which have not necessarily been supportive of what we have wanted to get done, but have always been committed and have done so much. And in a sense, I want to thank you for allowing me this public opportunity to pay tribute to them, because they can never get it enough, and they often don't.
Okay, I think the questions are probably dwindling down, but there's one I thought I would bring up. How did the decision by Britain to leave the European Union, how does that affect what we do as a foreign foreign ministry? Does it change, you know, what we have to do? I just wanted to know what impact that would have on us.
I will just answer in two ways, just giving you two brief examples. One, we continue to relate with Britain, with the United Kingdom bilaterally. Nothing has changed in terms of our relations. We have the High Commission here. We continue to have a High Commission in London. The relations at the bilateral level remain strong, firm. Another area which would have been of perhaps the most obvious interest is in terms of how we would relate to the United Kingdom, it having pulled out of the European Union. And what we did, as not just as Jamaica, but as a part of the Caribbean group, was that we entered into an economic partnership arrangement with the United Kingdom to ensure that we were able to retain the benefits of the trading relations which we had with UK when it was a part of the Union. We anticipated and we did that, and that was actually signed before Brexit took place.
Okay.
So you see, I answer the questions which I can, and I don't answer those which I cannot.
One question, VP Stewart.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, when you're a member of the Foreign Service and you're posted abroad, is it something that is constantly drummed into you and policed, that you always remain circumspect and you don't get too hyped, for want of a better word, because any transgression that on your part will be, we call it blown out of proportion, for want of a better word, because you are there representing your country, versus if a private citizen were to do the same thing?
We try to live normal lives, but we understand the weight and the burden of your representational functions. I use the word representational duties, but you have to understand that you are representing your country. And in so doing, there's a certain image that you want to ensure that people have of your country. And so, yes, one wants to be careful, but it doesn't mean that, as somebody once said, you don't walk around on a Saturday in your suit as if you're expecting a Security Council meeting to be called. But you live normal lives, but you have to, I talked about discretion. you have to exercise discretion. And I don't think it is peculiar to us as a Foreign Service, even if there's a higher burden. I think in any position you carry, you're the CEO of an organization, certainly you know that there's something that you can do, can say, and ensure that you are always respectful of the office you carry. And so our Foreign Service officers are groomed to understand and appreciate that. And certainly we know that at higher levels, there's a greater spotlight and attention. People look to your words to see and to hear what you say, and will carry it as if it is being spoken by the government. And for that reason, you do need to be careful. I don't find it harmful to be circumspect at all. I find it quite helpful because it means that also in your personal lives, you will also retain that as well.
Okay, because one of the reasons I asked to say ambassador is because you are pretty fluid in your interaction with us. But I notice most persons in your position, they tend to sound as if they think before they make any sound come out of their mouth. They think about what they're going to say before they say it. And I was wondering if it's a part of the it's because of the training, or if it's because of the understanding that you are carrying the burden of being seen as Jamaica, not as an individual.
Well, you always are. This evening, I've spoken. I have said to you that I'm giving my personal views. And of course, as I give you my personal views, I also have a perspective which would have come as a result of my years of service. But I wanted to be clear that it is not something that I expect to be reported on the news, that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade adopts this position. So I need to be careful as I speak with you. And in fact, my choice of ensuring that I have a written text is to enable me to have the proof of this being what I said. So whatever is recorded, and if it is used and is to be taken out of context, I have that. So yes, I will admit we need to be very careful. It is something that comes with the job.
Okay. Okay, one last call. Are there any other members of the audience who have a question to ask? Okay. I think at this time, let's thank the ambassador, and we're gonna ask DP Earl, who has been tasked with the pleasurable duty of giving the vote of thanks. DP Earl.
Thank you, DP Stewart. President Richard, fellow Kiwanians and guests, it is my pleasure to present the vote of thanks tonight on behalf of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston, and to thank our elegant and esteemed speaker, the permanent secretary of our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I didn't realize she was already a diplomat before becoming permanent secretary. So you have elevated the post of permanent secretary ambassador. I was in two minds about doing this, and then having looked at the flyer about the New York consul inviting people, I said, whoa, but wait, I presented a tribute to the diplomats in 2013. So it's now a chance to do a thank you. So I found it, but that time it was face-to-face. That term was not even involved in 2013. Now we're doing things virtually. Ambassador, you have allowed my mind to reflect on our own ambassadors who are required to play on behalf of Jamaica, and that they too are diplomats. I must insert here views commonly held about diplomats, which range from awe and envy to one of irreverence. Definitions of diplomats by political analysts have included the following: honest officials sent abroad to lie on behalf of their country, or persons who remember your name, your birthday, but never remember your age. That's diplomacy. And one who tells you the nastiest things in the nicest way, such as telling you to go to hell in such a way that you actually look forward to the trip. So, but you have put those things to myths now. And I would not encourage people to think those things. You have broadened our general understanding amidst the complexities. And we even have one of yours who will be president next year, Paul. And we have been experiencing his absence here and there, now and then, because of the country. So I'm not going to take long to just say that we're so happy that you were able to make the time. And believe me, we have been enlightened. Even more, oh, I forgot to say, when I gave the tribute to the diplomats way back in 2013, it was a series of things. Every year, we used to host the diplomats during Diplomatic Week. And I just had the privilege that time. I think we had, from US, it was Mrs. Bridgewater. Wasn't that her name?
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly. And she paid me a compliment by saying I should send her a copy of our tribute so that she could take it to the White House. Well, of course, I don't know if that was done, but her very saying it made me feel quite good. So to be able to say thank you now, I did not even realize that our foreign ministry was doing such a great part. In other words, they're doing similar things to the other countries. And you've really made us feel proud of our country. And we will be a bit more careful when we hear comments being made or the emphasis on, as you said, the bad side, when there are so many good sides unspoken of. But it is my pleasure to present to you virtually, and I hope you'll share the screen, President, Chairman Desmond, with a certificate of appreciation from our club in recognition of your contribution by your address tonight. And we thank you very much.
And Ambassador, you will receive the framed copy through Paul. Paul will be the best person to get it to you in short order.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
And in case you don't know, it's a certificate of appreciation presented to Ambassador Sheila Seeley Monteith. I found that a tongue twister, actually. In recognition of your contribution to the Kiwanis Club of Kingston, given this 15th day of June, 2021. Thank you very much, Ambassador.
Thank you. The pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
Okay. President Richard, over to you.
Yes, thank you, DP. Earl, and your duties are not finished, so you will proceed with the duties of the Sergeant at Arms.
Wow.
Followed by notices and announcements, thought of the week, and then our termination.
All right, Ambassador, we do have some light moments, and sometimes they are a bit border, but I try to be above the belt, except that a friend of mine told me recently he was following instructions. The cashier said, strip down facing me. By the time he realized he had done the wrong thing, because it was the debit card she was talking about, it was too late. But I have another story for you. And this is about a Scotsman who was stranded on a deserted island for all of 10 years. And this particular morning, he saw a speck on the horizon. As the speck, he thought to himself, that's certainly not a ship. As the speck got closer and closer, he began to rule out even the possibilities of a small boat or a raft. Suddenly, there strode from the surf a figure clad in black wetsuit. Putting aside the scuba tanks and mask and zipping down the top of the wet sweatsuit stood a gorgeous blonde. She walked up to the stunned Scotsman and said to him, "Tell me, how long has it been since you've had a good cigar?" 10 years, replied the amazed Scotsman. With that, she reached over and unzipped a waterproof pocket on the left sleeve of her wetsuit and pulled out a fresh package of cigars and a lighter. He took the cigar, lit it, and took a long drag. "Holy Mother of God," said this castaway. "Ah, this is so good. I'd almost forgotten how great a smoke can be." And then she says, "And how long has it been since you've had a single drop of good single malt?" Trembling, the castaway said, 10 years. Hearing that, the blonde reached over to her right sleeve, unzipped a pocket there, and removed a flask and handed it to him. He opened the flask and took a long drink. "'Tis nectar of the gods. 'Tis truly fantastic." At this point, the blonde started to slowly unzip the long front of her wetsuit, right down in the middle. She looked at the trembling man and asked, "And how long has it been since you played around?" With tears in his eyes, the Scotsman fell to his knees and sobbed, "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, don't tell me you've got golf clubs there too." That's it. That's all for tonight, President.
All right, Earl.
That's the disadvantage of virtual. We can't get the reactions, but I hope it's went up.
I now invite DLG William Reese to bring the announcements and interclubbing opportunities. And then
Thank you.
The thought for the
Thank you, President Richard. Good evening again, fellow Kiwanians and guests. Just two short notices. On Thursday evening at 6:45, we want to have a wrap-up meeting for our annual Barbie Fry and discuss the upcoming virtual bingo night. That's Thursday night, 6:45. President Richard will be sending out the link on behalf of Chairman Orion Gordon. And just a reminder, next week, June 23 to June 26, Kiwanis International Leadership Education Virtual Conference in Salt Lake City. We have three delegates who have registered, as well as, two delegates have registered, as well as we will have 3 observers. Respect to interclubbing opportunities for this week, I will send out the schedule tomorrow with a link as to a meeting we can attend tomorrow night. That's all for now. President Richard, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, President. I now invite DP Stewart to bring us the thought for the week.
Thank you, President Richard. I have 2 as usual. This one is, success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. And this one, when everything seems to be going against you, remember that the airplane takes off against the wind, not with it. So those are my 2 thoughts for the day, for the week.
Thank you very much, DP Stewart. And I know DP Director Ralston can identify with that as a pilot.
Yes.
Fellow Kiwanian, or specially invited guests, and members and interclubbers. it is now time for the toast. I ask everyone to raise their love. This meeting of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston is hereby terminated.